Hi, everyone. Welcome to ContractScan.io. We're excited to be able to show you our finished product. We're still, have some things that we would like to change, but we're happy with what we have, and we're ready to show it to the world. So in our group, we're the big dogs. Myself, Miles Paulson, Grayson Fatala, and Rihanna Brown, and they'll be spending some of our stuff later on in the presentation. So our problem is legal documents are long, really hard to understand, and full of legal jargon. For the average person, they're intimidating and hard to really grasp what's going on and to feel confident making a decision based off of these legal documents. Many people don't read through the entirety of a legal document, whether it's a rental contract, employment offer, or a mortgage agreement. And so our problem that we came up with, that we felt and heard, was people lack a quick and easy way to view the most important information from a legal document before signing their name to it. And so we felt that we could figure out a solution to give people the kind of the power and understanding of these legal documents so that they can feel confident making these big decisions with legal documents, whether it's with rental contracts or employment offers. So only about 16% of people read their employee agreement entirely, which might surprise you at first, but if you think about it, it really doesn't. Most of us, when we read it, we maybe read the first page, how much we're going to be paid, and when we need to start, and that's about it. About 56% of baby boomers breached their contracts, while 50% of millennials did so. However, 80% of Gen Z breached their contracts, and breaches in contracts can frequently result in termination or even legal action. And we believe that part of this, especially with Gen Z, is because we don't quite understand what we're, signing and agreeing to. And so it makes it harder for us to feel confident making these decisions about work and where we're going to live and what we're going to do without the confidence to make these decisions. And our approach. So our core components and outcomes, we have a simple and easy to use UI. It takes the stress out of reading and signing legal documents and just presents the information to you very straightforward. We also isolate grammatical patterns that indicate people's obligations. So it helps the user to be able to know, exactly what they need to know, what applies to you as the user, and what the company or rental agreement or renter, whoever, will be, what their agreement is. And the summary is returned to the user in a presentable format. Again, helps the user feel more confident about making informed decisions so that they can be happier. And note also, this is a big thing, no contract information is stored on the site. Confidential information is secure. And we realize that, these type of legal documents, privacy is a very big concern. And we want to be able to assuage those fears that your confidential information is secure. And we do not store any of your personal identifiable information. So the benefits to this, the current alternatives are enterprise level and very costly. So for the average everyday user, it's really not realistic. It's for big law firms and big companies that are able to pay a lot of money and just automate things really fast. But if you're just wanting to get a better grasp of your job offer or your rental agreement, there really isn't much of an option for you. And this is easy and open source legal document summarizers are not accessible to the average user. Again, this goes back to it's usually behind a paywall and just not very user friendly. But ContractScan.io is free for anyone to use and makes the process of reading, understanding, and signing legal documents really easy and very understandable. And so now I'm going to pass this over to Grayson for a little bit to talk about our design.
Awesome. Thanks, Miles. Yeah, in terms of design, we were just trying to make something that was rapidly iterable. And so honestly, a big part of our development period was spent just setting up these technologies, using code pipelines, using other AWS infrastructure in order to make it something that we could rapidly iterate through solutions for. And so what we were using was a Python Django backend, and that's especially to use the natural language processing functions and libraries like Spacey and other ones in Python. And then a React front end due to, it's just kind of the industry standard at this point in terms of front end design. And then other technologies, just Route 53, code deploy, and certificate manager, just to have a secure connection between our users and our site. And we were deploying using Vercel. It's a website that makes it very easy to deploy a front end using React. And so that was kind of the solutions that we saw in terms of our technology stack and making this website happen. And then just a little bit more about our method, we talked about extracting the grammatical structures and, the TLDRs that we're going to take out the main things from your contract that are important that you need to know as a user or as an employee or a renter or what have you. But just a little bit more in depth. It's really cool using Spacey and some natural language processing models. We're able to tag the different parts of speech. So verbs, direct objects, preposition objects. And once we do that, we're able to kind of create these really, fairly complex or simple, however you want it, grammatical structures, where we're able to take their tag and their dependencies and regular expressions and their lemmatized forms, and they're able to extract a lot of different things. And so you can see here, just for the demo purposes and just for our minimum viable product, generally we noticed that in a lot of employment agreements, which are our main focus, there was a lot of yous, I's, we's, and the companies, right? And so those are kind of the main things we search for, followed by verbs, and then to the next object kind of thing, just to extract those phrases that were important, that indicated obligations. And in the future, there could be a lot of building on here, a lot of iterations through different types of patterns we could use, but we'll get a little bit into that later. And Rhiannon's going to get a little bit more into kind of the real design of it now and how we made it usable for the average everyday person to check out their contract and understand what's inside of it.
All right, and so as we mentioned before, as people are reading these legal documents, it can be a really stressful and time-consuming process. So in the design of our website, we wanted to make it really easy and streamlined so that people could, decrease their stress as they're trying to understand these contracts. So you can see on our homepage here that it's very simple. It's very easy to read. We just have a homepage that tells them exactly what we offer at contractscan.io, one that we help them quickly extract key information from any type of legal document. Two, we'll present that summary information to them in a really easy to read and digestible format. And then lastly, we'll give you the confidence in understanding that document before you decide to either sign or not sign or negotiate some offer that you receive. And so if we go into our generate summary page, it's very simple. It's just 2 steps where there's a drop down where you can select the type of contract or legal document that you want to upload. It could be a legal or an employment contract, a rental offer, a mortgage agreement, something like that. And then you just simply upload that file and then press submit. And then you'll be taken to this loading screen, which will be nice because depending on the size of contracts, as you know, some might be 20 to 30 pages long. Depending on that size, it might take a little bit to run through that natural language processing algorithm that Grayson talked about earlier. And so this loading screen will show up, and then afterwards you'll be presented with that summary there, which will give you a numbered list of different terms within the contract. So whereas you might have to search through pages and pages to find like the start date for an employment agreement, you can see in this bolded list that it's very easy to find that type of information, and it's very easily summarizable. And then also that algorithm will shoot out a numbered list for each different type of grammatical pattern. So in this one, it shows all the sentences that start with you will. So a user would be able to quickly and easily see their obligations in that contract, such as you will receive a relocation bonus of $4,500 and you'll be required to relocate, that type of information. And so if we run into here, we can see our live demo. just showing how they upload that contract there. Press submit, and then because this is a shorter contract, within a few minutes or few seconds, it just shows the summary right there. So that's what it would look like if you were to run through our website. And then as we go into the method for this project, we did some user testing for this as well. And our process was to use a program called Loop 11 to conduct our user testing. And so the process was we'd have users in the test read an employment agreement just on its own, just read through a PDF and try to gather some information from that. And then they'd answer a series of questions about that contract, such as when was the start date listed, or how much is the yearly salary on that? And so they'd answer a series of questions about that, and as well as like how long it took them to find that information. And then the next step, they would go and upload that contract to contractscan.io, use our website, and then they'd see the summary for that legal document. And then they'd answer another series of questions evaluating how useful that summary was to them. And then lastly, we had a section where they could provide some open-ended feedback on our design. And so for our user testing, we wanted to test personas that were people who were familiar with legal documents such as employment agreements, rental contracts, and that type of thing. So we tested with people that we found at our school because they were in our target persona. And kind of the testing allowed us to evaluate our core outcomes and core design principles. And we were able to see that through using contractscan.io, they were able to improve their understanding of these legal documents and decrease their stress while using the website. And then they also were able to improve their confidence in their understanding of it so that they could make an informed decision based off of reading that. And then also from the open-ended feedback that they provided, we could evaluate our usability of our website. And so now Grayson will go over our analysis of these user tests.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Cool. In terms of analysis, what we were really a little bit more focused on was the user experience, right? How they felt about their contract. We were trying to measure the accuracy with which they could understand what was happening and the accuracy with which they could recall certain things and the speed that they found those. So those measures were kind of more for us. But in terms of the users, we wanted to know how they felt. So here you can see first is initially, as they just looked over an employment agreement, what their confidence level would have been in signing it. You can see that some were very not confident. And we also have them divided right there by how stressed, whether or not they feel stressed analyzing legal documents. So those purple bars are going to be the people who are stressed, and the orange bars are people who are kind of in between. They didn't feel like not stressed at all, but they were just kind of in the middle. And then we have that same graph, but using the website, right, with that nice bulleted list that gets presented. And you can see here that everybody shifts to the right in a really big way. Everybody goes from no more ones or anything like that, all the way over to all 4s and 5s. And there's a bigger shift in those who do feel stressed about contracts. And so that's a good sign, right? They're coming out of this, even if they're stressed, saying, oh, I generally feel stressed with legal language, but I feel confident signing this because of the summary I was able to read. And then overall understanding was another thing that we tested. And this was reported as well, how easy to understand they thought it was. And then the attribute that you kind of see divided by here is similar to stress, but it's just confidence and understanding a legal document. But similar idea of, my sentiment towards a legal document as I sign it. And it's a pretty similar story here. Initially, their overall understanding of the contract is lower, especially for those with the lower confidence and understanding legal document. And then you can see that everybody moves to 4s and 5s. So it was expected. We did give them a fairly simple contract to analyze because we didn't want to give just, the hardest thing ever. So it was a fairly simple contract. But even then, the human brain just doesn't process long form paragraphs in a perfect way, right? We like lists. We like lists of things that are like 4 to 7 long. And for that reason, the bulleted points just stuck better in our users' heads. And so we got some positive feedback, some negative feedback, and everything in between. In general, most of the positive feedback just had to do with the UI. Our design team did a great job on that, just making sure everything looked very clean and simple to use. You saw in that user test, that was the first time someone had used this website, and it took them, 15, 16 seconds to get the whole process done. So I think people really appreciate that, especially in a modern era where mobile applications are so fast. We want speed and we want easy. And the truth is, if there was one or two more steps, people probably wouldn't use our website. Negative was kind of things that we expected. Some people wanted photos. I guess that wasn't as expected. But some other things were just kind of the appearance of the summary that was presented. So it really was just kind of like that, grammatical structure and then the list, right? And so that gave you an idea and you're able to read it. But there's a lot of improvement that we could do within there. And we'll talk about lessons learned and what we're going to do in the future, right towards the end. Also, one person did say that the summary did not have the start date, which it did. And so that was something that was kind of hit home for us because we realized it's not just about getting the right information on there, but presenting it in the best possible way that'll make them understand it. And so we have some solutions we want to iterate through for that as well. And we'll get into that also. And then suggestions, give more context to what things mean. So we are just kind of extracting those phrases, and it'd be nice to be able to, for the phrases that need it, extract more context, and then organizing it. So kind of with that person that wasn't able to see the salary, it's not that it wasn't on there, but maybe it wasn't highlighted in the correct way. So it'd be very nice. And one thing we'll work on is creating subcategories for specific types of things, like, it's just kind of what's it called? Just kind of having like a category like salary or benefits, able to click on that and kind of see what might be related to that. Awesome. Yeah, so that was kind of like our evaluation and our analysis of our user testing. And so a couple of lessons learned. Individuals want to understand their contracts and agreements, but don't have a ton of time, right? And so we want to give those tools, we want to give them that time and that resource, right? Another important thing had to do with the security, kind of like Miles talked about earlier. And that was that, before we were figuring out like, how are we going to store these legal documents and how are we going to make it secure and the legality of that. But then we discovered that the technology is there just to do it all within the session of that person's, website, right? And so we do need to look into the legality more in the future, just of like using anything for it. But at the end of the day, we're not storing anything from this user's legal document. We don't know what company it's with. We don't store any of that text. It's all done in their own session. So that was something that was important for us to learn. And then a couple of limitations that are tough is just contracts are complex and there's a bunch of different types of them. And so learning to account for all the different structures and obligations and language that can happen in there can be fairly complicated. And then also writing different algorithms for different types of contracts is time consuming. Like we said, we only really got to employment agreements. So finding ways to make those more robust so we can figure out what we can do generally and then use that on specific ones as well. And then also there are certain types of contracts that are encrypted by the company. And with those, we are still not able to process those. They have an AES encryption. So with those ones, we're just kind of out of luck, Awesome. And then what we want to do in the future, the algorithm. So we're just extracting the phrases right now. One thing we feel very passionate about and we wanted to get to, but just within the frame of our project this time we didn't get to, was simplifying legal words, right? Like, if a rental agreement says the mortgage, or I don't know how to spell it, but I read it in a bunch of contracts. Basically the person who has the mortgage, we can just simplify that to say like either the renter or something like that. And then generate summaries for all entities. So right now we're doing you, the company, I, we, but truthfully, we could have done it where we tag every single entity. So that could be, a specific non-disclosure agreement. And we could list all of those out and then just have you select one of those and bang, you're getting all of the obligations associated with that specific entity. And it's really nice because the structure is there for it. And it'll be easy to build out once that's all said and done. And then for our site specifically, we want to create those highlighted categories like we were talking about. So if it's an employment agreement, demonstrating benefits, non-disclosure, salaries, or if it's a rental agreement, prepayment penalties, mortgage insurance, those kind of things. So you can click on those and know about those specifically and the terms associated. Different file types. So maybe a Word document. In general, contracts do tend to be PDFs, but it wouldn't be the worst thing to build that out. And then, we do want to create user profiles and store info about, kind of who's using our websites and what their purposes are. like we said, we do need to look into the legality of that. And we will never be storing the contract in itself, but just general data about, the usage of our site. And so we can leverage that data and create a better product. And at the end of the day, what we really want to do is empower people to know what they sign. And for the average everyday person, that's not available at this point. Most of us can't just go hire a lawyer, and most of us don't have access to these, enterprise level softwares that analyze contracts. So we just want to give that ability to the everyday person to see the information from a contract in an easily summarized way. And the framework that we've built out will empower us to do that. And that was just kind of our goal, was to get that minimum viable product out there so we can iterate through solutions so we can make it usable for every possible use case. I hear our citations. Thank you so much.